Well, gracias. Thank you, Pancho. I appreciate it, and I'm so grateful to be with you, this very distinguished panel, and I'm grateful to the Microinsurance Network for convening us all around this important topic, one that I think is so core to what our industry does, which is to help people build financial security for themselves and their families. And who better than the insurance industry to tackle the very important and challenging topic of women and their financial security around the globe. We know women are challenged in this regard. They enjoy less financial security than men, and that has been further compromised as a result of the pandemic. So it's so important to have forum like this one to really highlight some of the issues that are at stake, and also importantly highlight what we can do about them together. So with that, my helpful slide navigator, could we go to the first slide? Thank you very much. Well, I wanted to first, my job is to set the stage here for, as I said, the rest of this distinguished panel to go deeper on solutions and things that we can work on together. But just wanted to give you a flavor of what some serious global organizations are telling us about the progress or lack thereof for women and girls, and what could be lost, particularly as a result of COVID. So we'll begin with the United Nations. It's warned of losing a generation or more of gains in gender equality and women's rights due to the socioeconomic impact of the pandemic. That's because we, as women, carry a significantly greater burden of caring for family members and losing wages and income when we are taking time off to care for family members. Our employment, women's employment is dropping faster than average. McKinsey says female job loss rates due to COVID are about 1.8 times higher than male job loss rates globally. We could go to the next slide, please. And the World Economic Forum tells us that the pandemic has added 36 years to the timeline to achieve gender equality. That means we're still 250 years away. For some of us, and I'm sure this is true for all the panelists who've spent our lives trying to close the gender gap and advance this important cause of women's financial security. Those are very daunting, discouraging numbers. The next slide. I'll say a moment, just a perspective from the US. In the US alone, 3 out of 4 women have said the pandemic has impacted how long they can live off their retirement savings. We already know the statistics showed pre-pandemic that women were not as well prepared as men. We live longer, and women had inadequate savings to ensure that they have a healthy and comfortable retirement. So I think these are daunting numbers, but it's one that the business community, this is a problem the business community, and particularly our industry, can rally around. We were already doing a lot of things, individual companies like Generali and all of our other members globally, as are our associations, to address women's financial security. And I think we should take the further impact of the pandemic as an opportunity or a reason to double down on those efforts. The next slide, please. So before we get down to how we solve the problem, it's helpful to know why we have a particular problem with women. And I think it's 2 primary challenges that were there before the pandemic and certainly continue to be, and that's access and competence. Access is about making sure women can take advantage of the financial protection tools that are out there. And we need to get more financial protection products in the hands of more women, and to understand, particularly as we look at the developing world, some of the fundamental barriers to that happening. We can talk more about that in a minute. We also have to focus on women's confidence. And it's a fascinating statistic and some fascinating findings from a global financial literacy study that was done by the Global Financial Literacy Excellence Center, which is based here where I am in Washington, D.C. And it showed that women, when given the option, would choose "I don't know" to questions measuring financial knowledge. But if you take away the option of "I don't know," they could get to the right answer. So we have a competence gap. There's a leader in our distribution sector here in the US, a female who's a past president of the organization, and she works with women all the time. And she said, just getting women to ask that first question, and they'll caveat it, this is a dumb question, I don't know what I'm talking about, and just giving them reassurance that no, the first question is a start, and that puts you on the path to solutions, but it cannot be overstated. We also at ACLI have a study that found that 73% of working women in the US are engaged in managing their long-term finances, but only 57% of them feel confident about that. So women have a seat at the table here, but they don't always have confidence that they know what they're doing. So now we get to the how. How do we as leaders in the business industry, leaders in the insurance industry, what do we do about this? The next slide, please. Well, I think a first step is to double down on our commitment to diversity in corporate leadership, frontline sales, and customer engagement teams. We know that that makes a difference in terms of engaging with diverse populations. If there's somebody that's like you, opening the door for conversations and opening the door to help you solve problems, then you're much more likely to engage and find your way to a solution. And I know that we'll talk about this later, but that's just a reality I think that insurance executives would affirm the world over. There is a lot of opportunity for growth here, particularly as it relates to placing women in leadership positions in our industry, both in companies and at the regulatory level. When we have more diverse teams, we will better serve underrepresented communities. That's just a fact. Next slide. I would say the good news is that the insurance industry is taking this seriously. We have several initiatives around the globe helping to diversify women in insurance so we can be better able to serve women. And here's the logos of these fine organizations. I was pleased to serve on the B20 Special Initiative on Women's Empowerment. It's a critical platform for the business community. First, just highlight the need for this being a priority, and then also highlight some of the barriers to women having more access to financial security, and then you start talking about the solutions. The focus by the B20 presidency on women empowerment has been cross-cutting across all working groups that work on everything from financial security to climate sustainability. And I would really urge you to look at the B20 website for publications by Ambassador Bracco on women's empowerment. And Italy, I can't say enough what a strong leader they have been of the B20 initiative on behalf of women. It has been an excellent process involving lots of women with insight and influence from around the globe. And I think it's a very, very important product, and important that it's getting the insights from this initiative are getting elevated to the G20, as they should be, many of us would say. At the ACLI here at the American Council of Life Insurance, we're looking for how we can do our part to support our member companies in their efforts to foster diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have created a DEI forum for representatives from all of our members to share best practices, to give us counsel and advice on policy that's moving through the US Congress or at the state level, or is important to our state regulators. And this forum is somewhat in its infancy, but is already producing great results and great insights that are actionable from the standpoint of the insurance industry in the US. Of course, the Global Federation of Insurance Associations under Pancho's able leadership has begun to develop positive policy. initiatives on diversity and empowerment to build on what the JIFIA Financial Inclusion Task Force already has as its existing mandate. And we've begun, Pandra, you can say more about this by just gathering what's already out there. And Norma Alicia will highlight a really powerful initiative that is well underway in Mexico. So gathering some of that insight is the first step to us as the Global Federation of Insurance Associations having more impact. In the US, we have Million Women Mentors that has established a Women in Insurance initiative to encourage women to embrace STEM careers that can lead to careers in insurance. The A to I initiative has positively impacted the development of policies and diversity in employment. And of course, Generale and the Italian Insurance Association are hosting a very special event in Rome. How I wish I could be there on October 18th. I will certainly participate wholeheartedly virtually, but they will focus on the contributions of insurance to the G20 goals. And this, again, brings this important topic to serious government leaders around the globe. So each country has different challenges, a different set of challenges to women's financial inclusion and empowerment, but we all are doing our part to highlight the problem and where the gaps are and how we can advance solutions. And maybe it can take us less than 250 years to make progress. I believe that it will take us much less than 250 years with all of this brain power and energy and effort combined to make a difference. So Pandra, thank you for including me in this important panel, and I will turn it back to you.
Muchísimas gracias, Susan, por tu excelente exposición. Me gustaría ahora hacerte una pregunta. En todo el mundo, las mujeres tienen mucho menos probabilidades que los hombres de ser económicamente activas.
Being economically active. In your opinion, how can the inclusive insurance ecosystem help bring down the barriers to inclusion in the workplace for women so that they can enjoy an equitable participation?
Well, it's a very good question. And of course, it's important to focus on not just the problem, but the how we can address some of these concerns. Every country is different, as I said, but just looking at the developing world, there can be fundamentals where the discrepancy, 197 million fewer women than men own mobile phones. And that can be a fundamental tool to access to insurance or other financial security products. Women lack identification cards in many countries and cultures. Again, another important tool that sets the basis for access to financial accounts and financial security. Financial services are just a core enabler for self-employment, enterprise growth, asset or wealth creation. We've got to improve digital capability, address some of these needs. So we need to look at all the ways which we as businesses, and again, I would compliment the micro insurance network for all of its efforts to really advance solutions in important places around these issues. And then taking it from the sort of micro to the macro, I would just say, again, I think the G20 focus on these issues is very, very important because you need leaders at the highest level from around the globe focusing on how to resolve some of these issues. And the B20 initiative led by our colleagues in Italy has been extraordinarily well-timed and well executed. And I think that will help inform the G20 process and help inform the process of leaders who are trying to figure out solutions. So we play a role at the micro level and at the macro level as the insurance industry.
Muchísimas gracias, Susan, por tu respuesta.
Thank you very much, Susan, for your answer. So now, let's continue with this forum. Now we will have the presentation of Norma Alicia Rosas Rodriguez. Norma is the General Director of the International Association of Insurance, AMIS, since the year 2021. She was the president of the Mexico Insurance company of the Mexican insurance markets. She worked in many solvency areas. She was member of the International Association for the Mexican Financial Stability Board at the National Council of Financial Inclusion. Regarding the international participation, she was an ex-co-member of the IAIS, president of the Latin American Association of Insurance Supervisors, and she was also a chair of the Insurance and Private Pensions Committee of the OECD. She's the vice president of the Regulation Committee of the International Actuarial Association, AIA. Norma holds a degree in actuary, a diploma in applied statistics, and an MBA from the ITAM. She's a distinguished fellow by the IAIS in 2019, and she's a distinguished person by ASAL in 2013. Alicia, the word is yours.
Muchísimas gracias. Estoy muy contenta de poder compartir.
Thank you very much, Pancho. I am so glad to be able to share this forum with you. This is so important. And I'm glad to be together with Susan and Doris. I think we want to convey to you what's the relevance for us to be able to include women. We need to include women in this financial culture. I could tell you that even specifically in Latin America and in some countries that are not so developed yet, women are some of the less financially included groups. And this is the result of many aspects. One of them is that they face situations that make their situations worse. In some cases, they're single mothers and they have to raise a family by themselves. Sometimes they're also members of a minority. Sometimes they're also entrepreneurs and family leads, and many of them also work in the informal sector. And this is precisely because they don't have enough time to be in an office. So they need to find another solution to bring their family forward. And this puts them in a very, very vulnerable situation. They go to informal credit, and that results in a very unfavorable situation. When you talk to them and you speak to them about financial aspects, they're usually scared of the term. And they say, no, I don't know about it. That is like a natural response for them. So when we thought about this situation, what we did was work with some of our supervisors. It was in particular with the behavior supervisor in Mexico. Is the National Commission for the Defense of Financial Services Users. What we did was try to see which were the minimum capacities that we could support women develop. And then we had this project, the Project Minerva. We could say that this project is a result of a very close collaboration between the public and private sectors. And it's precisely the private component of this project that really works very actively on this. For the first time in over 80 years of the association, AMIS, we are actually able to have in our executive committee a 33% women. And that has also allowed us to have a more relevance in this aspect. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about this project. Can we go to the next slide? Basically, we could say this is the first financial literacy project with a gender perspective developed together with the AMIS. The objective is providing financial literacy to women so that we can further develop their financial capacities. Next slide. So what are we looking for with this project? We want women to be able to make financial decisions on an informed basis. We want them to be able to start planning for the future, to stop living day after day, so that they can start planning and managing their budgets, that they also learn how to formally save, for them to be able to choose the right financial tools, and also to protect them from financial fraud. That is the aim of this project. Next slide. Now, what is it about? Well, we thought that actually all women already have access to some phone, some sort of communication. Perhaps it's not very formal. They don't need something very complicated, but we are offering these online courses. We have didactic guidelines, guides that are digital, and we're also offering mobile apps. So there's no excuse. Practically in our country, what we saw is that more than 95% of people have a mobile device. Next slide. There are 4 modules. The first module is related to how they can manage their budgets, inputs and outputs. How am I prepared for this? How can I acknowledge my income, my expenses for me and for my family? In this way, they will be able to learn what they need for them to also know where they're spending their money, who manages their finances, and how they can build the family budget. The second module has to do with a more long-term idea, savings. How can I save? What strategies do I have for saving? It is also for them to trace a roadmap of how they're going to be saving. They also can choose the aspects where they can have some money, take some money away so that they can save it, and how to save for emergencies. Now, the third module has to do with credit. How are they managing their credit properly? Is it an ally or is it an enemy for the situation that I'm facing? Is there a good debt or a bad debt? How should I get in debt in relation to my pay capacity? And then how I can work in a responsible credit. The other one has to do with insurance. Am I prepared for the unexpected situations? As a woman, do I know what I have available? Do I know what type of insurances are available there? How can they help me face different situations? The different terms that I need to know about insurance, terms meaning wording, and which are the tips to hire a good insurance. Now, next slide. I was telling you we have printed and digital guides. You not only took the course and that's it, you can have those. You can bring all those material home, all those resources, and consult them after. These cover the 4 modules. Now, next slide. These are online courses. The maximum duration of these courses is 4 hours. There are different strengthening and refreshing activities, and there are also support so that they can really understand the terminology. And then at the end, there is a participation acknowledgement for women. Well, we also notice that this makes them very happy, and they say, oh, this is the first formal acknowledgement I have in any way. It is so because many of them, well, maybe they never were in a course, leave alone a financial course. Now, the next slide. This is an interactive session. It is very simple and it's user-friendly. It is mainly directed to the 40 million women we have in Mexico, those who don't know about financial education. You could practically join from anywhere in the world, actually. Then we have the insurance module. This is to show you what it looks like in the different slides. There are many activities. You can see what you can do. Then you can choose which is the right one. You see it, you read a document, and then you have very short tests. And then you can that way know if you understood it well. And then you have some other activities. And then here's an example of the certificate that they're given. Something very important for women is that when they see the certificate, the government, on the one hand, supported by our secretary, we work also with Conducet, which is the surveillance institution. So this certificate is very valid because it is acknowledged by all those institutions. No, what are we doing now? Well, the next steps is continuing with the project. We have been in discussion with the Women International Institute. It covers the whole Mexican nation, and it has been very well received. So we're looking for strategic partners so that we can really outreach to more people. We're working with different chambers and government or departmental institutions. We want to disseminate this not only to their employees, but also to people who are buying in those department stores, for instance. We're working with department stores as well. Well, the idea is that they can really get that. And then we also have the full support of the AMIS president and UNICEF, the UNICEF president as well. The idea is to have access to this from virtually any phone. This is what I wanted to share with you. There are some other projects that we've been developing, and they're very much focused in pushing women to do more. We have signed the UN Women Agreement. We are also working on diversity and inclusion, and with specific strategic alliances. And lately, we also signed the commitments with the Secretariat of Public Finances so that we can continue to develop women and achieve more financial inclusion for them. This is basically what I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ana Alicia, for your wonderful presentation. I'd like to ask you a question. How many women have enrolled in the Minerva platform? Can they enroll foreign women as well? Well, thank you very much. Actually, we've been into this for 10 months with this platform, and yesterday we already had enrolled practically 9,500 women. We think it's a very interesting number. And it's mainly during the last months, we had this exponential growth. A few months ago, we were talking about less than 5,000. And now 48,000 women have enrolled. And we're very happy with these results. Thank you very much, Norma Alicia. Now, continuing with this forum, we're going to introduce Doris Isaro. Doris is the current leader of Diversity and Inclusion Day in the Generali Group. It is a 72,000 employee life and property and casualty insurance company. It is an asset management company present in 50 countries with 56 million global customers. She actively supports the work of the Group DI Council, the Global Business Executive Governance Panel in charge of the steering group, DI Strategy and Execution. She's a firm believer of lifelong learning, and she thoroughly enjoys mentoring and coaching. During her over 20 years of experience in connecting people from different cultures and unleashing people's potential, she has been involved in the design and rollout of over 30 awareness journeys on unconscious bias, disability, age diversity, women empowerment, and allyship programs collaborating with world-renowned business schools. Doris is passionate about diversity and inclusion, driving equity and for gender. She works with different aspects and backgrounds. She has built solid relationships with DEI professionals and other financial services industry and large cap companies, being an active member of the EMEA DEA Forum for Companies. Doris is Italian-Canadian and she has worked in the UK, Belgium, Portugal, and she now lives in Italy. Doris, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Francisco, for inviting me here today.
To be part of this panel of very distinguished guests. And as Francisco said, I'm here today both as a diversity, equity, and inclusion partner for the Generali Group, which is one of the main global insurance players in the world with about 70,000 employees, but also as an active member of the B20 Women Empowerment Task Force. So before we start with the presentation, let me say one thing about women empowerment. Empowering women today is even more critical than just 1 year ago. The COVID pandemic has significantly set back the progress towards gender parity and inclusion. And Susan already mentioned the impact that the pandemic has had on the timeline to reach gender parity. So we need to add another 36 years to get there. But there are also other big challenges. Women's jobs are definitely more at risk than men's due to their overrepresentation in sectors that are hardest hit by the lockdown, like retail, tourism, and hospitality. But what is more, I would say, alarming is that there is an estimated 20 million girls in developing countries who may never return to school after the pandemic because of the shutdowns and because now they are supplementing household incomes. So I think, these numbers are really alarming and upsetting at the same time. And we have the responsibility to react to these numbers and to the pandemic and to the effects of the pandemic on women equality, and to reaffirm that there is no other way to proceed towards a truly inclusive economic growth other than bringing the women into the conversation, other than unleashing the full potential of 50% of the world population. So in the light of this, the G20 are urged to coordinate their positions and to support this initiative on women's empowerment. And I had the pleasure and the honor, I must say, to work with the Women Empowerment Task Force alongside Anna Chiara Lucchini and obviously Diana Bracco, who was heading the task force. May I ask you kindly to go to the first slide, because I would like to show the joint effort of that's behind this very important initiative. I worked with 30 countries, with 130 members, and with 74 companies. And what I'm going to do today is give you some highlights of the works of this task force that has agreed on an inclusive strategy, which includes consultation with a broad group of social partners in the spirit of collaboration and joint action. And the policy recommendations that stem from this work will be then given to our Prime Minister, Mario Draghi, who will share them with the global leaders during this year's G20 meeting in Italy. So I believe, that we have really a historic opportunity to create a gender balanced future with common goals and also with this spirit, a collective spirit. So on the right-hand side, you can see the main outcomes of the discussion and of the initiatives. And I tried to summarize them into three main policies, basically. So the first action that is recommended by the B20 task force is to act towards a more inclusive world, which brings back women to the workforce and also to the heart of the economic activity in order to shape the future. What does this mean? It means use gender budgeting. It means encouraging the progress of services to assist women in re-entering the workforce. And it means also being very rigorous when we monitor female involvement in the labor market. It also means funding studies on the impact of female jobs on economic development. So inclusion is the first recommendation. The second recommendation of the task force is to reimagine. And by reimagining, what the task force is suggesting is that we need really to rethink the society we live in, building a more inclusive society and also workplace cultures where we break free of gender stereotypes. So we need to be able to identify and to redress existing gender differences, and also, to tackle cultural expectations that limit the women's prospects. And I am referring to unpaid labor, workforce discrimination. And again, there's a lot in cultures, a lot of stereotypes that we need to get rid of. This can be done by funding and implementing programs, but also benefits that will enable men and women to combine work and family roles. Because this is really very important. One of the main difficulties for women, and it's already been mentioned by Susan and Norma, is that the responsibility of family chores, the responsibility of caring for family members, whether they are children or elderly people, is very much up on women. So this needs to be redressed. And we need to strive for gender balance in the workplace, but also in family. In the workplace, definitely, it can be done also by rewarding companies that promote gender equity. And I'll come to that later on when I talk about giving you some examples of what we do at Generali. The third important recommendation aims at fostering economic growth. So it's about growing, about making it possible for women to get to management, leadership, and entrepreneurial positions. And this can be done only by bringing together the private sector, governments, non-profit players, and by setting targets, national targets, which must be ambitious for gender equality in decision-making roles. And again, an important recommendation is that everything is monitored, reported on, in order to see how it changes over time. So 3 main recommendations, including reimagining and growing. But let's move to the next slide and see a little bit more into the detail some of the concrete actions that were mentioned, that were put forward by the task force on gender empowerment. So for women to have an impact in the world, the first, let's have a look at the left-hand side. And what we realized that in order for women to have an impact in the world, it is extremely important to expand the participation in the most in-demand work positions, what we call the jobs of the future, which are already the jobs of the present, as a matter of fact. And to do this, we need to cultivate an interest in the scientific subjects. So science, technology, engineering, math, so the STEM sciences, and develop women's ambitions and skills in these subjects. How can we do that? Well, we have to counter some physical and some cultural obstacles that exclude girls from participating, first of all, in STEM education, and then obviously also barriers around, the expectations that somehow limit women's access to succeed in the high growth industries. At the same time, it is very important to offer upskilling and reskilling to the women in positions that are most likely to be disrupted by the trends of the present and the future. So the recommendation is to identify women in high-risk positions and to collaborate with businesses and with educational institutions to reskill them for the high-growth sectors, and also to promote innovative, gender-sensitive recruiting. If we look at the right-hand side, there is another important piece of the puzzle, and that is, the women must be at the core, the gender lens must be at the core of innovative activities. So in practical terms, this means that in key fields like health and emerging technology, the recommendation is to increase gender diversity in research, in development, and to establish, again, gender-sensitive ethical standards that cover R&D in these fields. It's important to, let's say, put the expertise, the interest, the needs of the women at the center of any attempt to address the global problems, the global challenges. So we refer mostly to climate change and to inequalities. And may I ask you to move to the next slide, please? As you can see, there is another important action that needs to be made. The women that are represented in senior roles, in decision-making positions, are not so many in the world. You can take a look at those percentages there. It is very important, by collecting sex disaggregated statistics, to remove the obstacles that women face when in order to access decision-making roles. So the recommendation is to establish and to finance strategies that remove the legal, the political, the social cultural obstacles to the advancement of women in the workplace, and also to create compensation schemes for companies that attain gender diversity in the decision-making roles or within the supply chain changes. And obviously this needs to be done together. It needs to be done, by the private, the governments, the non-profit players, which have to set ambitious targets for the decision-making roles, and need, again, to monitor and to report on the changes over time. So there is a lot of emphasis on metrics and on transparency in these recommendations. There is also the need to enhance the entrepreneurial potential of women, to build the entrepreneurs' ambitions and abilities, promote the creation, funding, the scaling of companies that are owned by women. And actually, I was very interested in what Norma was saying about the Minerva project, because it's definitely a project that goes into this direction. So this is, in a nutshell, the main recommendations that have come out from this task force that has worked horizontally with many stakeholders on women empowerment. And if I have just a couple of more minutes, I would like now to give the perspective of the corporate world by saying what we do at Generali. So if you move to the next slide, let me talk about a few, not all, the activities and the projects that we have in place which support gender diversity with a global reach, okay? We have many projects and let's take a look at them practically, right? Group guidelines that promote diversity and inclusion, which means that there are provisions on company crashes, on flexible working, on the support for employees returning to work after a long break, and this can be illness or maternity. We also have some specific policies regarding the representation of the less represented gender, who happens to be, in the majority of cases, women, in boards and statutory boards or supervisory bodies. So this, I think, testifies to the commitment of really pushing forward gender equality. And we have, I would say, a plethora of development programs. Now, calling these development programs, it's a little bit, let's say, reductive. I think, I remember before, Susan mentioned two very important words: access and confidence, right? Access and confidence when you're talking about women accessing and being comfortable in using financial tools. But if you let's say, transpose this to the corporate world, you have exactly the same problem. The problem of accessing the managerial or the leadership positions because of a lack of confidence. Obviously here and this is one of the biggest obstacles, unfortunately, for many women even today. So we put in place career accelerators for different layers of the organization: senior managers, managers, internal young talents, in order to support them in their career path. And these programs do tackle the problem of confidence, of becoming confident in their positions. We also have upskilling and reskilling programs, which target the 70,000 employees worldwide with a specific attention to women. And then there is definitely other projects such as, looking at how to reduce our gender pay gap, especially by tackling the equal pay gap. And we have a very ambitious target there because we are aiming to bring it down to 1%, which means, a lot of commitment and investment from the company. But we are also part of important fora and platforms. And Susan mentioned before the meeting that we have in Milan on the 18th of October. Yes, we are partnering with the Women's Forum for the Economy and Society, which is one of the main international platforms for action on gender equality at G-level, G20 level. And we are committed to bringing our own, let's say, effort and input to the recommendations that will be made also through this important platform. And apart from that, we have other programs which instead support gender equality out there. And out there means we are also looking at other sectors, for instance, by partnering with one of the biggest regattas in the world, which is called the Barcolana, a huge international sailing event. We support gender equality in the sailing world, and there seems to be a gap there too. And we want to be, to have a social impact by what we do and through our actions. I will stop here, simply, let's say, stressing one key message. I think we are at a historical moment. Sometimes I get challenged as to not yet another, let's say, initiative on gender equality. Oh my God, haven't we talked enough about gender equality? But I think that now the world has reached a different stage of maturity on this topic. And having so many stakeholders coming together, bringing their vision, and including so many women into this vision in order to shape the vision will make the difference. The women in the majority of countries, in my opinion, have reached a different level of maturity about how much impact they want to have in the business world and in the world at large. And therefore, I think that through these recommendations and through what organizations and companies are doing, progress will be gradual, but will come. And it's time to take, to really commit relentlessly. It doesn't come overnight, but with all these activities and with the strong commitment of organizations, governments, I think this is the time for action. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Doris, por tu excelente exposición. Y ahora sí te damos...
Thank you very much, Doris, for your excellent exposition. And I have a question for you. Which are the specific inclusion projects that you are leading around the world? And we're talking about women inclusion.
Thank you very much, Francisco, for this question. The women empowerment projects are actually the thing I love most, and I, like to put my time and brain and heart into. And I have the opportunity to work with so many women internationally, honestly, that it's really a pleasure to do these programs. Let me focus on a couple of programs, and may I ask probably the organizers to put the next slide in my deck, just to give you, the visuals of these programs and talk about them. There are two women career accelerators. One is called the Lioness Acceleration Program, and it is targeted at senior female managers at group level. So we are preparing them to, let's say, move up to the next level, which means, leadership team at group level among the top 200 leaders of the group. So this leadership program is very interesting. It tackles the confidence issue very much, because confidence is at the basis of executive presence, which is a key ingredient of leadership. And it's something where women tend to struggle a lot. We also talk about gender bilingualism, because believe it or not, we need to be bilingual with men. Men and women have ways of expressing themselves which differ. And so during this program, we look at the ways we differ in order to converge. It's like learning a new language. So you learn the language, women learn the language of men, men learn the language of women. And this helps them to have a dialogue. Let me give you an example, very, very brief. Women tend to be more process-oriented, whereas men tend to be more, fast objective-oriented. And this changes completely the conversation. And sometimes they cannot, come to an agreement because it's like speaking English and Spanish. So gender bilingualism is part of this course. We also face or let's say deal with political savvy. Political savvy means being able to navigate organizations, big organizations. And this is another, let's say, area where women struggle a lot, because they come to terms with their values. And so that's another topic we tackled during this program. But the most important ingredient of the program is always the support that is given by the allies. So these are not women-only programs. We bring the men into the conversation. So the leaders are part of these conversations. They are mentoring and they are sponsoring the women in this program. And I must say that we have had very good, let's say, to use business terms, returns on investment on this program. The last one, we were able to promote 30% of the women in this career accelerator program. And I think this is an excellent program for women to become confident, but especially visible, because very often women are not visible to men in their leadership positions. We have another program which is called Elevate. Elevate is targeting a different layer of the organization, group women at managerial level. obviously we work with the talent pool. It's an international talent pool of about 50 women, and there we tackle a lot the question of confidence, the so-called confidence gap. Women tend to over rely on external validation, on the judgment, on the external pressure, and this often leads them to be reactive rather than resilient. But there is a solution to this, actually. What you need to do is to train yourself at becoming, or rather train your composure, right? And this allows the women to develop strong personal boundaries, build their confidence, and mostly develop awareness so that they are able to transition to new roles. So these are just a couple of examples of programs that we run at group level. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about them.
Muchas gracias, Doris.
Thank you very much, Doris. Now we're going to go to the Q&A session. So now the first question is to Norma Alicia. Norma Alicia, is there a minimum training requirement so that you can take part in the Minerva training courses? Thank you very much, Pancho, for your question. No, there's no minimum requirement. There's no prerequisite. The language we're using is very user-friendly. And the idea is precisely that a person, whoever can read, can take the course. That'd be the only minimum requirement, being able to read. There's no special requests or requirements. Thank you very much, Norma Alicia, for your answer. Now I have a question for Susan. Susan, in your opinion, which are the key aspects that people should be aware of when focusing on women empowerment in the insurance world?
Well, I think that, first of all, it's very important to have more women visible in leadership, because that broadens our thinking about what attributes a leader should have. I mean, women's voices are different. Doris's presentation was outstanding, and she captured so many of the things that can be helpful to advance women at the executive level. But what will also help is having more women in leadership, so we become accustomed to how women lead. And it's wonderful to be on this panel with two women executives. Pancho, I know as the General Secretary of Fides, you said that now the majority of your CEOs are female. Is that right? So we're making progress in various parts of the world, but a lot more to make. And the other thing I would say is just take that section on development from Generali's playbook and execute that. Doris, you should just share that with your insurance colleagues around the globe, because I think those are excellent programs. I personally like to be in the Lioness program because I think that's got a very inspiring name. But you break down very well the things that become barriers to women being able to rise to executive ranks. And so I think men can support those too. It's not just about women taking this on. Male executives can support these kind of concrete programs that will help us advance.
Muchísimas gracias, Susan, por tu...
Thank you very much, Susan, for your answer. It was very clear and very straightforward. Now I'd like to ask a question to Doris. Which are the main resistance arguments that you face in your male personnel in regards to women empowerment and inclusion? How do you work to overcome that resistance?
Thanks for the question, Francisco. This is a very delicate thing. Let's say that there are two main types of resistance. Since we set some targets around hiring women and promoting women, as we said before, right? We want to have critical mass in the managerial and in the leadership position. So there are two ways to do that, through hiring and through promotions. So obviously we encourage our managers to promote women and to hire women. The typical, let's say, pushback is there aren't many out there, so I don't know where to look for them. And it is a pushback that has some roots in reality, as a matter of fact. I mean, for some types of positions, for some types of roles, particularly the STEM roles. But the program, I mean, we are running a lot of external programs, and we are part of many initiatives which are aimed at encouraging, attracting more women into STEM faculties at university. We are part of the STEM in the City initiative of the municipality of Milan, for instance. This was a huge effort to make STEM faculties attractive to young girls when they have to take the decision to, what to do with their lives. So we do work also outside in order to increase the number of women that we can employ at the end of the day through sponsorships, through scholarships, through these kind of programs. And so that's one answer to that. But we also encourage them to look at the global market, right? Because sometimes they tend to close their eyes and look at the national market only, whereas the global market has a lot to offer. And and by the way, we know that will bring also cultural diversity on top of women diversity. So, and the two types of diversity actually, and this has been proven by lots of research, at the end of the day, increase the bottom line. They bring better performance, they bring more innovation, and it's good for the business. So that's the kind of encouragement that we give to them, and we help them to do that. Then there is also another kind of pushback or resistance, which is more about the internal promotions, right? When we have some ready women for the top or the leadership positions, there tends to be some pushback around their potential. And this is, the typical kind of pushback that you have around women. It's the potential bias. Women are fantastic. They are competent. They know everything. They're super skilled, but they are not, I don't see them in that position. They're not ready yet for that position. And there you have to explain what the bias around the potential of women means. And you have to do a lot of education on your managers and to address that issue before entering the performance management reviews and the talent reviews. So there are specific moments of time where men and women are taking decisions where you need to be with them, to support them, to take the right decision with data and with the right type of mindset and reasoning. I just mentioned a couple. There are many, but I think we need another session for that.
Muchas gracias, Doris. Vamos ahora a la última pregunta.
Thank you very much, Doris. So now we go to the last question, because unfortunately, time is always short in this kind of seminars. Norma Alicia, what should we consider when developing an illiteracy policy that is inclusive so that we can allow women educate children? That is a very interesting question. It is something we have to tackle. Sometimes we have the obligation of educating children. What we have been trying to do in the Financial Inclusion National Policy is to identify how we can support women. We need to have a set of lessons learned for them so that they can really educate children. But we also have to see who will help them with childcare. So we have found some supports in basic education for children, for youth, and also with extended hours. Women, on the other hand, should be included in formal mechanisms that will allow us to reduce this economic vulnerability. And this should be present in countries in Latin America. There's a lot of family support in Latin American countries, but unfortunately, some women are alone. We have to work with the government to see who can help them, who could give them a respite assistance so that they can really do this. Unfortunately, the pandemic has allowed us to work remotely. So many women, I know many companies, mainly in insurance company, are being given the opportunity to work from home and having the home office scheme stay here forever. And they give special emphasis on the women that need to be working, especially for those who have young children, so that we can really foster this. This is crucial for women. Thank you very much, Norma Alicia. Susan, do you work with negative stereotypes? Do you work on them, on those stereotypes that usually bankers or financial people have with women in the financial sector?
Well, I think that, we all in our careers have probably faced stereotypes, and we overcome those by being really well prepared all the time and good at our jobs, and trying to blaze a trail as so that other women can come forward and contribute with their own style and approach. But again, I would just reinforce what I said earlier. The more women we have in executive ranks, the more it changes the norms of how one should sound or behave. And I'm in love with Generali's program on how to develop women executives, because that will be the thing that helps overcome stereotypes. You look at our younger generation coming out of colleges and professional schools now, and certainly here, at least 50% are women, and I think that changes things too. Young men are competing with young women in classes and getting the first jobs, and we're on the brink of change. But I like that Generali program that's accelerating moving women into executive ranks, so we crash through that glass ceiling that has faced women around the globe.
Muchísimas gracias, Susan. Y ahora sí vamos, nos queda.
Thank you very much, Susan. We have 1 minute for the last question. Unfortunately, time is running short. There was a big expectation. We really apologize. Doris, what can we do to attract more women to STEM jobs and the future jobs?
Oh, there are many things that can be done. As has already been said by Susan before, and partly by Norma, you have to get rid of some obstacles, which are cultural and which are physical obstacles. So physical obstacles, think if the women you want to attract have something very basic like a computer, a smartphone, or a broadband. So you need policies, this is more at, I would say, governmental level, national level, policies that address these issues. They have to have access to these physical tools that allow them to basically close the digital gap, right? So this is one thing. At company level, what we do is actually participating and supporting many university and university efforts in order to make, and also school efforts, so educational, I would say, in the educational field, in order to make STEM more attractive. And this may also mean, having features that are better able to make them fun for the young generations, whether they are women or men, right? So fun is an important part of the learning process. So addressing these things, it's important. And at the same time, as Susan said, you need the role models. You need to portray the role models. They need to be visible. So what we ask, for instance, in our company to our leaders is to participate in initiatives such as Inspiring Girls, which is a global initiative where actually the leader is posting something on the social media. Social media reaches everyone, particularly the younger generations, saying what they did, what their aspiration was when they were very young, and how they got there, or what obstacles they had to go through. So they also show the human side to it. There are many initiatives that can be embraced, both from, as I said, in terms of addressing physical obstacles and in terms of addressing cultural obstacles.
Muchísimas gracias, Doris.
Thank you very much, Doris. Now we will have to be rounding up this wonderful expert forum panel. Thank you very much, Susan, Norma Alicia Rosas, and Doris Visali. Thank you very much to all of them for the wonderful presentations and the clarity of the concepts. Of course, reducing the current gender gap will only be possible thanks to the wonderful contributions from the highlighted and remarkable insurance stakeholders like the 3 speakers. And then we also have microinsurance network that is present around the world, the globe. They are also organizing these expert forums that are really reaching out to the whole world. We remind you that this forum has been recorded and it will be in the Microinsurance Network webpage. We also want to congratulate Microinsurance Network for their work. And allow me as a facilitator to recommend Microinsurance Network. I think it's very important to be part of this organization. It is an organization that is open to receiving new members. We need anyone who is here but who's not a member of Microinsurance Network to really connect with them and try to explore the possibilities to participate so that we can really work on this important need that we have in the world, which is women inclusion and women financial inclusion and women empowerment. Thank you very much to you all.
Muchas gracias a todos. Fue un gusto.
Thank you very much to you all.